Hello, friends, and welcome back to episode 3 of the American Civil War, brought to you by Mr. D'Amico. Happy to have you here. We're going to keep on rolling today on the Civil War. 2 videos done. Here comes our third. I'm probably going to do the rest of the year, for the most part, on videos, just so that we can, I guess you could call this interacting, interact the most so that I can get you as much information as possible. Obviously, the circumstances are still tough, but we only have, it's like May 27th. Guys, we only have like 6 classes left together with the A-Day, B-Day schedule, so it's really, really winding down. Obviously, we have to have our assessment, some sort of a test on the Civil War, on the things that we've been covering. Guys, don't forget as well that this today is going to be the second part of your quiz grade. So it's your first quiz grade of the 4th marking period. Video 2, which we did Thursday, you answered points or questions that were worth 50 points. That's worth your first part of your quiz grade. And then today's questions will be worth another 50 points that go with this video. That will be worth the second part of your quiz grade. Okay, so keep doing what you're doing. I'm pretty much caught up on grading for you guys. I think I have maybe 2 assignments that still need to be put in, but we still have we probably have 8 or 9 assignments in right now. So keep checking. Some of you guys are emailing me, reaching out to me. Keep doing it. I'm here for you, and let's finish strong. Let's do it. It's can't say enough about your guys' effort and your persistence, and for the most part, doing what you have to do. So we're really, really mean it. We're proud of you. And just continue to finish strong. Okay. And yes, I did get a haircut. My fiance cut it for me. Just took the buzzer and got it all off. I couldn't stand the mop on my head anymore, so back to the short hair. All right, so let's dive in here. So we're gonna, now that we're into the start of the Civil War, we'll just breeze through like I usually like to do with you guys, just to remind you, just to get your brain going again on some of these topics. So obviously, at the start of the this war that's going to truly shape America, the Kansas-Nebraska, the Dred Scott case, the South Carolina, all these other states seceding. These are all things that we've done. The fall of Fort Sumter, which is in South Carolina, triggers the official start of the war. Last class, we discussed, obviously, Abe Lincoln, who was the president during the time, how it was really tough to choose sides, and how Mary Todd Lincoln, that's Abraham Lincoln's wife, obviously, was from the South, and she had 3 brothers that all fought for the Confederacy. Meanwhile, she's married to the man that's trying to glue the Union together. So a lot of conflicting going on here. Then we briefly did the Northern advantages, how the North just had more people, they had more railroads, the economic advantage. The Navy remained loyal to them and an already established government. So the North seems to have a lot of advantages on paper. We're sitting there like, darn, this looks pretty good for the North. And there's the railroads, but what the South had was just dominant, outstanding, phenomenal military leadership. We'll talk about some of the generals today. Obviously, everybody should know Robert E. Lee. He's really the one of the most famous ones who Abraham Lincoln was really good friends with. But unfortunately, Robert E. Lee, for Abraham Lincoln, unfortunately, was very loyal to Virginia. So he decides to lead the South. We'll talk about Stonewall Jackson, but the South had motivation. They're like, yeah, let's go. We're going to be our new country now. So they have skilled soldiers, this military culture. And then they, again, are fighting that war of attrition, where they could kind of just sit back and let the North come and try to conquer all their land and all their people. Okay. So there is our intro for the day. And now let's get into some of the armies here. So let's discuss the armies. Now, in terms of their colors, make myself a little smaller here. In terms of their colors, you might see a lot that the North, the Union, was blue, and that the South was red. They're usually represented as red, the Confederacy. But they didn't really necessarily have official colors because, in the beginning of the war, the resources were not what they wanted them to be. A lot of the soldiers, unfortunately, were wearing their own clothes from home. So for the most part, you'll see in a lot of like the pictures and the drawings and things, you'll see that the Union, the North, was wearing blue. And at the South, the Confederacy was not necessarily wearing red on the battlefield. They actually took up gray as their primary color, as their main color. So, there's similar shades too. So think about how tough that might have been to fight. I think, I forgot the video that I did last time. I was wearing, gray. And the first question I asked you guys was, what am I wearing? I was wearing gray. Some of you guys like, it looks like blue. So that just adds to like the confusion and difficulty of the Civil War, is that it's not like they're two totally opposite shades. But anyway, the army's built up very, very quickly. Obviously, the entire nation is going to be shook by the Civil War. And for the most part, most of the soldiers that did enlist were around. I mean, there were soldiers that were younger, older, but for the most part, the soldiers were between 18 and 29 years old. So once again, the average soldier was between 18 and 29. So even I would be like on the older scale. Remember, people didn't live as long, but I would be like one of the older soldiers here. But 18 to 29, there were drummer boys much younger than you guys are. You know, you guys are what, 15, 16, some 17. There were drummer boys that were like 8 and 9 years old. I mean, again, it's this idea of a total war, where even if you're not fighting on the front lines, you are somehow involved in the Civil War. This is the war that's going to change America forever. If a couple things went differently, who the heck knows what type of nation we'd have? So everybody's involved. So looking at the enlistment, we'll start with the Union on the left here. And again, these armies built up so quickly. It wasn't like, slow recruitment. Okay, now we have 5,000, 10,000. We had like tens of thousands of people flooding, the places where you would sign up and get involved in the war. So total enlistment, overall total, okay, the Union wound up having 2.6, a little over 2.6 million soldiers total enlist throughout the whole war. Now, their army was never fully that size. The maximum that their army ever got to was, I think, in the mid 500s, 520, 530,000. But it just shows you strength in numbers. You hear that quote, strength in numbers. The more, the merrier, the more soldiers you have, the better. So the Union definitely had more troops, most of them being white, as you see here, but almost 180,000 total African Americans who really, the majority of this war, for the most part, was really fought about, right? The differences in, the beliefs in terms of slavery and human rights. 180,000 African Americans enlisted for the North. Obviously, they were free African Americans. They had their rights. So standing up for, their civil rights and their ability to be citizens, to be humans, to be counted as people in this emerging nation here. So that's a lot of African Americans there, for the North. Also, some Native Americans. Some Native Americans fought on both sides here. We had only about 3K, still a pretty significant amount. Just like any other conflict in American history, that they're almost involved in all of them to this point, right? They're always involved, and they're always promised one thing. What are Native Americans? What's like a theme we've seen across history? Oh, come fight with us and we'll give you. It's always land, right? It's always land. We'll give you your land. We'll give you your land. And so the Native Americans did get involved, although the numbers of Native Americans where the Civil War was fought was certainly decreasing, thanks to President Jackson, who we've discussed because of his, Indian Removal Act, how a lot of the natives were pushed out west on that Trail of Tears, to Oklahoma and further west. But there were still some natives that got involved here. So that's the Union Army here. In terms of the Confederate Army, the most that they ever had was around 250,000. So again, the Union, the North, the most they ever had at one time was about 520, 530,000 for a total of 2.6 million. The most the Confederates ever had was about 250, 260,000. And their total enlistment, I think the second number here is a little bit high. I usually see estimates more towards the 750,000 range total. But for the most part, as we see here, the Union Army was definitely bigger. And again, we've said strength in numbers a lot of the times. Now, a lot of these soldiers totally lacked discipline. They lacked instruction. They had no idea how to fight in an army. They didn't know what verbal commands meant. They didn't even know how to fire some of their muskets or their rifles, or they didn't understand the different terms in terms of troop movement and where to go. So, the war in the beginning, the Civil War, 1861, 1862, the early stages of the war was an ugly one, because imagine being a commander of people that, I'm no disrespect at all to these heroes that fought in the war, but a lot of them were just, regular people like me and you. They could be shopkeepers, they could be carpenters, they could be, builders or teachers or lawyers or doctors. They could be anybody. They could be kids as young as you guys sometimes. And they were just kind of thrown in, almost like the American Revolutionary War. These people were just thrown in, and it's like, here you go fight, So a lot of lack of, I guess you could call it discipline and instruction at the very beginning of the war. But that didn't stop the enthusiasm of these soldiers. They were pumped up. They were excited. Even in the North, where they didn't necessarily have a new nation to fight for, they just wanted to preserve the Union. There was still a lot of enthusiasm. And as I said, you guys could see in the numbers, the recruitment was so fast. People enlisting like crazy. But yeah, imagine tomorrow, God forbid, won't happen, but a civil war breaks out, right? Obviously, we would know leading up to it, but civil war breaks out, and they're like, all right, let's go. We need people to fight. Do you personally have military experience? You guys are about 2 years younger than most of the people that started to enlist in this war. So, how would you feel going right in? Right, you might be inexperienced, you might be a little bit scared. Some of you maybe not. Who knows? But just trying to put you in the mindset of these Union and Confederate soldiers. Okay. Oh, this is all African American and all Black regiment in the North. Remember, we said 180,000 fought for the Union, so it's just cool to see this. Typically they were segregated a little bit, where it would be like a white battalion and a Black battalion. But there were definitely times where they integrated Blacks and whites together to fight. This was just, I forget the name or the number of the battalion regiment. I get my military terms confused too, but we'll just call this a group, I guess you could say, that all fought together here. African American, obviously, here. And so this is a map of 1861 Europe. And I'm showing you this. Sure, we're in U.S. history, but of course we got to take a step back, see what's going on in the world here. What do you guys think? How do we think Europeans viewed the Civil War? Just take a second to think about that, and I'll discuss it with you. But you have these European emerging, powerful, not even really emerging, powerful countries. You got Great Britain, that's real strong, right? France is, this is a little bit after the Napoleonic era. Actually, Napoleon III is ruling France at this time. You have Russia. You have the Austrian Empire, Germany. You have a very powerful European continent, and then obviously individual countries in Europe too. So do you think they supported the war? Do you think they supported the Union, the Confederacy? What are possible thoughts here? And this is a time where I wish we were in class and it would call on someone, or there would be that awkward silence in class, and I would just look around the room and nobody would want to answer, and you guys would have your heads down, so I didn't call on you until somebody answered the question. But just think about it. What benefits? How would the Europeans benefit from a divided America? Well, remember, this is about 100 years, a little less than 100 years. It's about 80 years after America, the United States, becomes a country, right? America is coming up in the world. They're becoming very, very powerful. They're a threat to the world power. They're a threat to these strong nations like Britain, like France, right? So actually, for the most part, most of the powerful European countries liked the war, because what the Civil War did was, on a world scale, it weakened the United States. It made them less of a threat around the world. It made them less of a superpower. So France and Britain actually didn't mind the war. They said, okay, this is good. This is going to keep us, France and Britain, at the top. And there goes America weakening themselves. We're not even doing anything. We're staying out of this war. They're weakening themselves by fighting against literally each other. So for the most part, France and Britain, although they didn't get involved in the war directly, they didn't mind it. Okay. And actually, we're going to learn about this a little bit later. The South, how did the South make a lot of their money again? The North had industry. The South had land. And what they would grow in that land is cotton. They would sell a lot of their cotton, the South, the Confederacy, overseas to Britain, to France. And these two countries relied on the South. So actually, the South, the Confederacy, believed in the beginning of the war, wow, we actually might get help from Britain and from France. They never wind up actually coming to help. Now, Russia actually had a different opinion on the war. Russia was, we'll put it in like tiers. Right now, we'll just say Civil War. Britain, France up here, really, really powerful. Russia was like a couple tiers a little bit underneath it if we had to rank them. And the United States was right about there too. Russia actually wanted the Union to win. And Russia wanted the American the American nation to come together and be strong together so that the world power scale, I guess you can say, would stay even. Russia did not want to see Britain and France go up and up and up because the Americans went down and down. I hope this is making sense to you. So Russia actually wanted America to come together and the Union to win and America to be powerful again to keep these other powers in check. But Britain and France were like, well, let them duke it out and fight each other. Maybe the South will win and we'll continue to emerge as powerful countries. Okay, first battle. Here we go. The first battle of Bull Run. Now, there's two names for this. The Union, the North, they call it the Battle of Bull Run. The Confederacy, the South, call it the Battle of Manassas. Okay? I'll read you these points. Again, you don't have to write them down, but just listen, learn, take in as much information as you can here. So after the fall of Fort Sumter, now we're in the summer. That was in April. After that fall, a couple months later, we have our first battle. So we have Abraham Lincoln, who's obviously the president of the United States, the president of the Union. He orders this man, General Irwin McDowell. He says, you're going to go down to Richmond, Virginia, take 35,000 soldiers with you, and you're going to try to push the South back. We're going to try to take over Richmond, Virginia. What was Richmond, Virginia? Richmond, Virginia was the new capital of the Confederacy. So he thinks, okay, Lincoln's thinking, okay, we're going to first go down to the Southern capital, which maybe not the best positioning for the South, because if you think about it, Virginia and Richmond, Virginia is literally like right on the border of where the Union starts and the Confederacy starts, and that's right in the middle. So maybe a deeper South capital could have been more effective in some ways. But anyway, that's Lincoln's orders, okay? So they want to go to Richmond, Virginia. Now, on their way down there, marching down there from the North, from the Union, they meet up with a Confederate general on their way. They're about 30, 40 miles away from their goal, from Richmond, Virginia. And they meet in this town called Manassas, okay? And waiting in Manassas is, what a great name, Joseph. Confederate General Joseph E. Johnston. Joseph E. Johnston of the South, okay, comes up and resists against Irwin McDowell of the North, okay? Now, we can talk about the details of the battle for a long time. Just for time constraints, we'll say that the North was doing really, really well. The Union started off hot. They looked really good. They started to push the South back and the Confederates back, where they met in Manassas, which again is about 30 miles from Washington, near Richmond. But actually what wound up happening, like we talked about, a geographical advantage, right? Knowing the land, knowing where you were, is big in war, for sure. So the South, the Confederacy, with General Joseph Johnston, and then a new general named Stonewall Jackson, General Thomas Jackson, they wind up taking the high ground. And the high ground is right behind this creek, and the creek is called Bull Run. So that's where it gets its name from. So the South winds up taking the high ground, and even though they were losing in the beginning of this battle, Joseph Johnston is able to push forward, and then from one of the flanks, Stonewall Jackson, who earns his nickname here at this battle, becomes literally a stone wall and does not let anybody penetrate his group of soldiers. They have the high ground, and they actually push in from the flank. So you have Johnston from the front, Jackson from the side. They wind up basically not fully surrounding, but able to kind of contain the Union and McDowell. And what winds up happening is at this first battle of Bull Run, the Confederacy wins. So it's an early victory for the Confederacy. And Stonewall Jackson they had like this war cry. I'm not even going to try to do it. You guys would just make fun of me, but it would be like this, like loud screech, yelling, this war cry that Jackson had, and it would like intimidate and scare the crap out of the North, and they would like run and sprint at them, almost like a Native American war cry, where it would just be so loud. So, excuse me. So Jackson really intimidated them, able to push them back. They called it like the rebel yell. But this battlefield, at the first battle of Bull Run, I'm going to show you some maps of it, was just I have so much to say about it. It was just an absolute disaster because remember, we talked about how the soldiers were like barely trained. They're trying to fight in their first battle. So, I mean, people were scared, people running all over the place. There were horses running around with no riders on them, artillery being shot sometimes into their own teammates because they don't necessarily know how to control the cannons or the artillery shells. I mean, just absolute 100% chaos on this battlefield. But again, the South was able to win this first battle of Bull Run, which was not in Richmond, Virginia. That was the North's plan. It was in Manassas, which is about 30 miles out from there, 40 miles out from there. And the aftermath of this battle was that a couple different things. So people, I'll let you guys kind of look at this really awesome, detailed map of that shows you the complexity. What happened here? This shows you the complexity of some of the battles in the Civil War here, but a couple of different really big results. I'm definitely going to ask you guys a question about this, like what were like two of the big results of the first battle. Remember, the North calls it the Battle of Bull Run. The South calls it the Battle of Manassas. Manassas is the area, the city or town. So one is that people thought or realized that this war was going to last longer than expected. It was not going to be a quick victory for anybody. It was going to drag out. They saw in the battle that one side would push up, the other side would push up. It wasn't just like one side dominated, 10 minutes later the battle's over. No, it was a battle. It was a struggle. So people realized that the war would last longer, so they started to train their troops more and really think about the long haul, think about the long run. Okay, it demonstrated that the war was going to go, very, very long. Okay. Two other things that this battle did. It intimidated the Union. It did motivate them. Sure, losing will motivate you because you want to come back better, but it did make the Union realize, like, man, the Confederacy is strong. Sure, they have less people and we might have more advantages, but it somewhat intimidates the North. And then the big thing here is that the Confederacy, the South, it kind of lulls them into a false sense of security, of confidence. It's great to have confidence, but the South won this first battle here, and after they just took Fort Sumter successfully, now they win at Bunker Hill. I'm talking about the Revolutionary War at Bull Run or Manassas. The South wins, and they're like, "Wow, we might like be able to win this war somewhat easily here. Like we're good, we're rolling, we're doing amazing." It's like, if you ever played on a sports team or, whatever, you win like your first game and you don't want to be complacent. You don't want to be like, "Oh, we won. We're going to be undefeated this year. That was an easy win. We won 10-0. Now we're the best team ever." Like you don't want to do that, right? You want to just take that win and be like, "All right, great. This is a great win, guys. Now we got to move forward," right? So the South kind of got themselves into a little bit of a false sense of security after this first battle here. Okay. Now, also, this was a major point because right where this area is in this battle was a major stronghold, right? If you can control the ground, the territory, the land, right where the Union starts and the Confederacy starts, if you can control that borderline there, it's really big. So that's why both sides really poured a lot of the resources into it. It was like 35,000 versus 35,000. After this, once again, the armies will grow and grow and grow after this battle in Virginia. Okay. So here is a couple different pictures for you guys. Here's Union General Irwin McDowell. He is the very first Union general that's kind of put in control here. It's later on going to be Ulysses S. Grant, but that's him on the left there. This is who Lincoln sends to Richmond, Virginia. They don't reach them once again. They go to Manassas, and then you can see here this picture of the battlefield. It just looks crazy. It looks like absolute chaos. You can see. I mean, it's even hard looking at this picture to tell who's who. Sure, you have the gray on the right and the blue on the left. The colors don't differentiate very much. I mean, the flags, I guess, would help because you had the American flag for the Union and the Confederate flag for the Confederacy. But it's just absolute, utter chaos. It's really tough. There's no radios to communicate with each other. There's hand signals, there's yelling, there's maybe drums to signify where to go and when to go, but it's craziness. Here is General Joseph E. Johnston. He is the man that is in part control of the Confederate Army. He's the one that pushes from the south and is able to resist and stop McDowell. He's like the first line of defense, this general. He was a superior general. He was fantastic as well. Here is Mr. Stonewall Jackson. His real name, once again, was Thomas. He becomes easily one of the most famous generals, not just in American history, but in world history, for his toughness, for his grit, for his confidence, and his ability as a leader. He's really awesome for the South here. He's the one that uses the rebel yell to scream and go crazy. This is Confederate president. We haven't mentioned him too much yet, but the president of the North of the Union is Abraham Lincoln, right? Well, the South is considering themselves a new country, so they need to elect a new president, right? So this is their president, Jefferson Davis. They do call him a president. And I think these are the same picture, but maybe I'm crazy and maybe I've been in quarantine too long. I think he kind of looks like Abe Lincoln. No, maybe. I don't know. This is the time in class where you guys would boo me and be like, what are you talking about, Mr. D'Amico? Yeah, well, I think he kind of looks like him. But anyway, this is Jefferson Davis. He's, again, the president of the Confederacy. He's the one in control. He's the one calling the shots. He's the one who tells Johnson where to go and tells Stonewall Jackson where to go. So he becomes a very, very important man during the Civil War. We've discussed Robert E. Lee, who is a Confederate general, very, very significant, very important as well. And there's the date, just so you guys can remember the date, July 21st, 1861 is the first battle of Bull Run. Hint, hint. They would not use the word first if there wasn't a second. So there will be more in the Manassas area in Virginia. And I think this is probably my favorite picture that represents what the battle looked like. I mean, you have just, like I said, it's just people running out of absolute control. I mean, it's like what these two horses pulling nothing. I mean, even the horses look intimidated and scared. I mean, this shows you what, I guess, the seriousness, and I guess you could use a lot of adjectives, the fear, there's a lot of, different terms I guess you can use to describe this picture, but it just shows what the Civil War looked like, at least in the beginning, with I'm not going to say leaderless armies, but we'll say armies and groups of people fighting that didn't have the experience, but they're still desperate and they're into it. But that's what the first Battle of Bull Run looked like. Okay, let's talk military strategy. And then this is going to be it. We're going to do the strategies of the North, strategies of the South, and we'll call it a day. I'll make another video for you guys on Friday. So we'll have another one that we continue diving in. We'll talk about more battles. We're going to talk about the military experience, what it was like to be an actual soldier. Some really good stuff in this battle that truly shaped America. So strategies of the North. What did the North want to do, right? What was their overall plan? What was McDowell's plan? What was another general was going to be McClellan? So we have McDowell, McClellan, and then obviously Abraham Lincoln, Ulysses S. Grant. What's the North thinking? The North sitting around a table, those Union leaders, what are their thoughts, okay? Their spirits in the beginning were very, very high, just like both sides were. They had a 3-step plan, the first 3 bullet points. Okay, first, we already discovered this in the Battle of Bull Run. They want to capture Richmond, Virginia, right? I think that's very common across any battles, across any even wars across history. Like in World War II, Germany wanted to take France. So where is Germany going to take over? They're going to try to take over the capital, which is Paris. It's very common. You get the capital, you get the important leadership buildings, and they don't have a necessary base or center anymore. So capturing a capital is a very important theme of war. So the North wanted to first capture Richmond, Virginia, which as of now they're unsuccessful. They will come back to it. And look at the map here. You can see the different colors. The beigeish color is the South. The blue color is the North. Remember, we still do have some of those states that are borderline here, but here's Richmond, Virginia. So you can actually see how close the capitals are. That's the Union capital. That's the Confederate capital, very close. So one thing at a time, the North wants to capture Richmond, Virginia. Next, what they want to do is gain access to probably the most important body of water in this war, not the Atlantic Ocean, because we're not worried about overseas powers. We're worried about powers within the United States. They want to take the Mississippi River, the longest river right here, which runs all the way down from Iowa, even as far up as Canada, all the way down. Why is the Mississippi River important? It's because the war itself, okay, bear with me here, the Confederacy, the South is going to be divided up into 2 areas because they expanded the South, expanded all the way over to Texas, which would be here if the map continued. So if the Union can first get Richmond, Virginia, then they can control the Mississippi River. They would have access and be able to fight on the eastern front, on the eastern side, and also on the western side. So having this middle point, that Mississippi River, would allow the North, the Union, to be able to control both sides. They would be able to reach Texas. They'd be able to reach Alabama, both sides. So that was a very, very key part, being able to get the Mississippi River. And their third part was create a naval blockade. If they could get the Mississippi River, they can come all the way down and control all the way down here. And remember, one of the North advantages, one of the biggest Northern advantages, was having a Navy. I know I'm giving you guys lots of information. Be like a sponge, keep absorbing. If you can have that Mississippi River, you can start to create a Union blockade, as you actually see on the map key here. And if you can create a Union blockade and totally surround the South and surround, the entire mainland here, what are you going to be able to do? You're going to be able to control the economy, the supplies. You're going to be able to control everything about the South. Remember, the South made their money by shipping their supplies to France, to Britain, to Europe. If you can stop the South from doing that, they're out of money, they're out of supplies, they're out of everything. This plan was called the Anaconda Plan. Why is it called the Anaconda Plan? Hope no one's ever experienced this before. But what happens if a snake attacks you? Okay, they might bite you. But what snakes do to their predators to kill them is snakes wrap themselves around you over and over and over again. Depends how big an anaconda snake is. And what they do is slowly, I know it's gross, they slowly squeeze the life out of you. It's not necessarily instant. They're going to squeeze the life out of you slowly until you're dead, until you're not breathing anymore. I know that's disgusting, so I apologize for that on this Wednesday morning. But it was called the Anaconda Plan, and it was named after a man named Winfield Scott, a Northern general. And this represents the plan. Okay, we're going to get Virginia. We're going to get the Mississippi River. You can see the snake here. If we can totally blockade them, we're going to starve them of their resources, of their finances, of their money. And again, that's called the Anaconda Plan. So make sure you know what that means. The Anaconda Plan, it's a big one, but a lot of, I guess, what's the word here? A lot of, factors that led to this plan. You need a lot of things to go right to have this work. Plans don't always just work. Okay, done. Okay, we win. No, I mean, it's going to be tough. It's going to be a challenge. They're not just going to be able to get the Mississippi River or Virginia or a blockade. But that's basically the North's strategy in a nutshell, is to control the land and overpower it and win geographically. Okay. So there's the Anaconda Plan. And once again, and last but not least here, guys, we are going to do the Southern strategy. How did the South plan to win this war? Okay. Well, it's not just as easy as win a battle, right? I mean, there's a lot of mental, firepower that goes into wars. It's not just always about who has the best shot or who has, the best army and the strongest army. It's about thinking and it's about planning things, right? So here's how the South wanted to win. First, like we just said, we talked about capitals, right? They want to capture Washington. They want to capture, remember, we're not really calling it Washington, D.C. right now because Washington State doesn't really exist quite yet, but they want to capture Washington. Okay, that is the, that is the northern capital. And eventually, slowly but surely, they want to invade the North. Now, remember, the South did want to fight more of a conservative, laid-back type of war, where, not laid back, I guess that might not be the right word, but they want to fight more of a war of attrition where they're defensive. But they said if they can get Washington, maybe we will slowly push up to the North, okay? A very important land piece for them, the land that the North wanted was the Mississippi River. The land area that the South wanted to control was called the Shenandoah Valley, And it is highlighted here. This is the state of Virginia, okay? This region here, county, you can say, area of Virginia to the northwest is called the Shenandoah Valley. If you can control, if you're the South, if you're the Confederacy, and you can control the Shenandoah Valley, you'll eventually have access through, if you guys can look at this map here, this area right here, you can say, oh, perfect, Shenandoah Valley right here. If you can control that, you might be able to control all the way up to Pennsylvania. You might be able to control all the way up into Maryland, to Washington. So controlling the Shenandoah Valley was extremely significant for the South. So that is their plan here. What else do they want to do? They want to, just like they did in the first Battle of Bull Run or Battle of Manassas, they want to shatter Northern morale. They want to just beat them up and scare them and intimidate them and push them back and make them think they don't have a chance. Okay, the Confederacy wants to disrupt communication. They want to, disrupt any type of spying, disrupt comms, disrupt message sending, delay things. Just kind of be annoying, disruptive, do what they can. They want to win European support. That's big for them. Now, if this is really important, I said this earlier. What two countries did the South want to win support from? France and Britain. Okay, because once again, I'll repeat this, they figured we're going to sell our cotton and our tobacco and our supplies to them. They need us really badly. They will support us because if we fail, they don't get to have the raw materials. But what winds up happening is the North does blockade the South, and the South is eventually no longer able to sell cotton and raw materials and goods to these European countries, France and Britain. The South thought, they need us, they need us, they need us. Well, France and Britain just say, we're good. One, what they did was stockpile their goods, so they had enough. They had basically a surplus of all these goods, but then also they just turned to other countries. They went to India, they went to Egypt, they went to other places to get what they needed, so they actually wound up not needing the South. So the plan to win European support was definitely a fail. But the South does want to do some other things. They want to bring the war to a speedy end. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it for this slide here. France was also busy at this time. Napoleon III was busy with the conflict in Mexico, so any hope of European support in this war really doesn't happen. Okay, the other countries pretty much just let the North versus South duke it out and fight for themselves. Okay. Hey, crew. Water. I talked a lot. That's going to be it for today. So just a real quick review, guys. Remember, this is the second part of your quiz grade. You'll have some questions to go with this. What did we do today? We did a lot. We talked about the enlistment, the size of the army, the great superiority of the North in terms of numbers, the inexperience of the soldiers, the all-African American, the all-black regiment here, which there was about 180,000 of them that fought very bravely and fiercely for the North. European support and the way the Europeans felt about the war. The first Battle of Bull Run, or the Battle of Manassas, where we met and talked about Stonewall Jackson and Joseph Johnston and McDowell, and how the South is able to win because of geography and because of some of their military strategy here. And I showed you some pictures, and then we discussed Jefferson Davis and the Anaconda Plan and some of the strategies, as well as the Southern strategy to take the Shenandoah Valley. Okay. So have an awesome day. Today's Wednesday. I think I'm almost positive I'll have another video for you guys Friday. And that's it. Reach out if you guys have questions. And stay positive. Not too much school left. I miss you guys. Have a great day. We'll talk soon. Okay. Bye, guys.